Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like no matter how hard you work, it's still not enough? You're putting in the hours, you're doing what you're told, you're staying disciplined, but the results, they don't match the effort. Here's the uncomfortable truth. There's millions of hardworking people in the world. Many of them are still struggling financially. Hard work alone doesn't build wealth. And if you don't understand what does, you can spend your entire life exhausted and still stuck.
The Mindset Manual with Myron Williams.
Hi, family. Welcome to the Mindset Manual, the place where we talk about the harsh truths most people avoid, but the truths that can actually change your life. I'm Myron, entrepreneur, father, and student of life. And today we're talking about one of the harsh truths about success, the myth that hard work alone creates success. This is episode 5 of my 8-part series on the harsh truths about success. Please click that like and subscribe button so you can continue listening to my real life experiences. So now let's get into the topic for today. Hard work matters, but effort without direction leads to exhaustion. Success requires learning, strategy, and adaptation. Let me tell you a little story about when I started my very first serious business when I was around 21 years old. That was my very first serious business. So I was going to college out in Alabama, studying business management and accounting, just trying to be a businessman. What I always wanted to be was a businessman. So if you want to be a businessman, of course, you got to study business. So I was going to school, doing really well, making really great grades, but I was just wondering, what was I going to do with this business degree? What was it going to do for me? And, back then, hip hop music, I should say, was starting to really take off. You had labels coming up like Bad Boy Entertainment, and it was Death Row. And in the South, we had No Limit Records and Cash Money Records. And that movement, or those movements from all of those labels, really sparked my attention. They really had my mind really going like, man, this is great. These guys are from the same type of place that I'm from. They're from the same type of background that I'm from and surroundings. And if they can do it, why can't I do it? I'm thinking like I could do what they do. I'm a businessman or aspiring to be a businessman. I'm in college. I heard some of Master P's story about his college and P. Diddy's stuff about his college. I heard these stories like, yeah, I went to college and I learned this. I got into the business and, I left college to pursue my music industry stuff. And I'm thinking like, well, I've learned a lot in college. These guys are from the same place. They got the same drive. I have the same drive that they have. Why not go for it? But the problem was I felt like, well, I'm stuck in Alabama. No knock on Alabama, but the music business isn't that great in Alabama at the time. At that time, it wasn't really that great. Music business wasn't anything. None existed in Alabama at that time. So I'm thinking like, where can I go still close to where I was? They want to go too far out of the South. I like the South. And where could I go? I was hearing at that time, Outkast was coming up and the Dungeon Family was coming up, and they had their own Atlanta movement going on. So I'm thinking, hey, Atlanta's right up the street. Let's just go to Atlanta. So that's what I did. I was like my 20th birthday, I remember. My 21st birthday, I told my mom, right after my birthday, I'm packing up, I'm going to Atlanta, and I'm going to pursue this music stuff. And she was like, boy, you crazy. You going all the way to Atlanta to chase some music stuff, and you don't even know anything about music. You don't even play any instruments. You haven't played the piano since you was like 6 years old. I'm like, yeah, it's not about me being a musician. I'm not trying to be a musician. I'm trying to be an executive. And, like Barry Gordy, that's one of the names that she would recognize was Barry Gordy. She wouldn't recognize Master P or P. Diddy, but she recognized Barry Gordy. She's like, Barry Gordy, that's Motown. That's huge, Yeah, I know, but there's a new level of music now. It's the Southern music, and the labels are coming together is what I was trying to explain to her. But let me fast forward a little bit. So I packed up my stuff. I went to Atlanta to pursue my dreams, pursue this. I wanted to stay in college so I can continue to learn about business, but I wanted to get closer to the music scene, which was Atlanta. So I got in school in Atlanta. I started making connections around the city. I started going to the nightclubs and going to the DJ events and going to different places and different concerts and gaining access and gaining connections and talking to different people and learning how to connect with this industry and understand how it worked. And so I got a lot of connections. As I was coming up through the ranks in Atlanta, I was approached by some guys about doing a music video show. Back then, I think it was sort of, I would compare it to like Rap City or one of those shows like that, where artists would come on, you would interview them, and then you would play their videos and talk about their new music and stuff like that. During that time, there were a lot of new artists coming out, and there were a lot of artists trying to come out of the South because Outkast had sparked that whole movement. So the labels were looking for a way to duplicate Outkast. So they were looking for a lot of artists. They were looking for labels that could duplicate that sound and that look. So my goal was to search out an artist like that. That's what they were looking for. So let me search out some artists that sound like them, look like them, move like them, and try to get access to, to the labels. But what better way to do that when these guys approached me about the show was I would have access to artists that were already on the rise, had already signed deals, and I would also be in the underground and stuff, so I could talk to them about the music and learn about the music. So I accepted the gig, and I started doing interviews with different artists. We had a lot of artists on there, Nelly and 8 Ball and MJG and all these different guys, 3 6 Mafia, all these different guys, UGK. We had all these underground artists that I loved on the show. And a lot of these guys were super down to earth. So they told me a lot about the business, how it worked, how they had to, all the things they had to do to get into the business and to get a deal and all this stuff. So I learned a lot from within the industry, more than I was learning from the college. The college was talking about the legal aspects of it and the accounting and stuff like that. But the artist was telling me about the show business part, the show and the business. And I learned a lot about that. So I took those two things and put it together. I started my first label. I started going out looking for studios at that time. So I found a couple producers that would work with me at within my budget. And those producers start telling me about different talent shows that you can go to and, scout talent. It's like, that's a great way to find artists. They're doing their performances, they're doing stuff like that. And you just talk to them. A lot of them are hungry. They'll work with you. So I went through it. I went to a lot of shows. I talked to a lot of artists. I went to a lot of their studio sessions and their performances and just trying to find the right fit for what I wanted to do with my label. And trust me, it was a lot of work. But I continued to work. I continued to do the show, market the show, promote the show, meet the artists, go. I was basically sleeping 2-3 hours a day. I was always running, always working, always doing my stuff. And it seemed like it was not going anywhere. It's like running in mud. You can't go anywhere fast. It was just always a constant grind every day. So I do the show. I interview an artist. I would play their videos, help edit the show, do all these things. And then later on, I would go out with the artist. Going out with artists to hang out and meet people, their industry contacts and stuff like that. So I had that part down of connecting with the artist and moving through that. But that was just only part of the work. The work was to build a label. And in that process, I'm like, okay, well, I'm with the artist. I'm learning all the business. Finding the artist right now and getting the artist off the ground isn't going to be easy. It's going to require a lot more money than I anticipated. So I said, let me take a step back. I did a lot of work, but I hadn't signed any artists yet. So I took a step back. I used the show, which was the platform for connecting with the artists. I used the show to get to the labels in another way, build a relationship with the label. So I started telling the labels, hey, I'll showcase your artists on my show. I'll play their video and I will market their album in the streets of Atlanta. I had a nice street team. So I put together a great street team so we could put out a lot of flyers and posters and demos and stuff at all the events in Atlanta because Atlanta had a lot going on. So I would sell the label a package on promoting their artists in the city of Atlanta and getting on the show. And they ate it up. But what it also did for me was gave me a lot of connections with Def Jam and Sony and Island Records and Arista and all these different labels. Epic Records. They spent a lot of money with me, and I had a lot of connections in the industry. So I was working really hard. Next, what did that lead to though? I started promoting parties around the colleges, which the labels really love. They wanted that college access. So that in itself helped me build a brand for my label because I was promoting the parties under my brand. So as the college people saw my brand just for a party, and then I would bring an artist, my goal in my mind was to brand recognition. The college kids will know that I throw the best parties. When I release my first artist, they're going to know, oh yeah, this guy, his stuff is always live. His parties are live, so his music is going to be live. A lot of work. Those parties were a lot of work. That promotion was a lot of work. All of it was a lot of work. But I started to get burnt out. I started feeling like I'm doing all of this. I'm making money, but I'm literally killing myself. I'm up all night. I'm partying. I'm drinking, doing other things I shouldn't be doing. And I'm just overworking. At this time, I think I had been in the industry maybe about 4 years. So I was, 24 at the time, going on 25. Great. I had bought a house. I had my own house, bought my first house, all that. I had a nice car, nice clothes, nice things and stuff like that. It was great. But I felt myself mentally burning out from working so hard. And that's a part of the grind. That's one of the harsh truths about success. There's a lot of work involved to get to that next level. I mean, I was becoming exhausted from all of those hours and all those different things I was doing or trying to do. I had a semi strategy of what I was trying to do, but I didn't have a clear path to success. And it led to my exhaustion and it led to me being burnt out. And I had to figure something else out. So I started to slow down on the parties a little bit. I said, let me get back into what my goal was, which was to launch the label. So I started more so focusing on submissions. So I put out ads in all of the local music magazines and newspapers. I put out put out an ad that I was looking for artists. I was looking for talent. And you can submit your demo to me and I would listen for it. Let the music come to me instead of me going to the music. That became my new strategy, working smarter, not working harder. Let the music come to me. Let it all come into my office. Open it up with me and my assistant, and we listen to it and find what we like. We had the pictures right there. We had the music right there. We had their contact information. So no longer were we going out. And by this time, I had saved some money up. So I had the ability to actually, if I found an artist, to put some money behind them. And mind you, I was still doing the show. I still had my street team, but I had other people running the stuff. I only had to appear on the show every now and then and do my special segments with some of the bigger artists. I had some other people doing some of the other interviews, and I had a street team running all of the promotions. So it gave me time to focus on the music, which I wanted to do. And eventually I did. I focused on it, found a couple artists. I found an R&B singer that I like. She had a really nice look, that Atlanta look, kind of like that Total, Escape, TLC type of vibe. She had that. So I liked her. I worked with her in the studio and I ended up signing. So after I signed her, I found a group that was kind of like on the edge of like the Goody Mob, but they also had like a kind of a Onyx feel. If anybody remembers Onyx, they had that both feel. One guy was from New York, one guy was from Texas, and they kind of had this little thing going together. So I listened to their music, went to the studio with them, went to their studio in their house and, vibe with them, and I signed them. So I had two groups, an R&B group, R&B artists and this rap group, good group. All right, I'm like, I got two artists. Let's go. Let's hit the studio. Let's go. I had made all these connections with all these different studios in the cities, all these producers in the city. And I'm like, hey, I got my people now. I'm going to come. They're like, yeah, come on in, man. We got you. We'll set you up with a package and let you get to work. So I did. Got to work. I started going to the studio with these artists. We started working on their albums, working on their image, working on their stage presence, all these different things. I was burning a tremendous amount of money trying to manage these artists. Because mind you, these artists have their own problems. They got their own bills. They got their baby mamas. They got their baby daddies. They got all these different things. And me being a young man, 25 years old, man, I got my own stuff I'm trying to do. I'm not daddy. I don't have any kids. You know, it's a lot of pressure for a young man to do. So I kept working and I kept working, I kept working, I kept working. But eventually all that work on the label, I never actually got an album out. The R&B singer, she got pregnant with a child. That was going to be at least a year and a half of her being down, you know, having a baby. She, you know, her voice was changing, her look was changing, everything. So that was pretty much shelved. That was pretty much shelved. My male group, you know, they were good. They were a little hardcore. They end up getting into it over a woman, and that group broke up. So it turned out all that work, 8-9 months to a year working with these artists, all this time in the studio, all this money that I spent in the studio was all for nothing. Pictures I had done little mini videos with them, all this different stuff. I had no artists, so I couldn't even shop a deal with the labels because I had no artists. The groups were basically done. So all that work was done and it failed. And I'm not ashamed to say that it failed. It gave me a great learning experience. It was a very expensive learning experience, but it was. But the reason I failed, when I turn back the clock and I think about why I failed at the music business, in that area of the music business, and I was successful in other parts of the music industry, as I'll talk about in some of my other stories, I went on to manage artists, big artists, and tour with artists and do all that. But my label attempt failed. The reason it failed is because I didn't have a strategy. I didn't have a clear strategy of what I was doing with the label. I wasn't focused. I had an idea, but I didn't have a strategy. I didn't lay out the path to success. I was doing a whole lot of other things, and I never put together a clear, direct strategy. How much money it's going to cost? Am I going to focus on one artist, two artists, or three artists? Am I going to try to focus in Atlanta? Am I going to focus on radio? Am I going to focus on this? I didn't have a clear strategy to do anything with the label. And that's why I failed. You want to start a business, you got to put together a strategy, a method of operation direct to where you're trying to get to success. Don't stray off into all these other little things or these other little paths. Don't stray off. Stay focused on the goal. You're going to get exhausted if you start straying off into these other things. Like I was burnt out. I did so many different things. I got burnt out. I needed to keep a straight path to success, a label with an artist. Get the album done, get a video done, shop it to a label. That was my strategy. Instead, I had multiple artists, managing multiple personalities, promoting over here, promoting over there, only putting about 30% of my time and energy into my label. My other time was into my show, into promoting these groups for the other labels, out in the night, just enjoying, you know, the entertainment business. I wasn't clearly focused and I didn't have a clear strategy. Don't make the same mistake that I did, especially with the music business. You have to be ultra focused on what you're trying to do. So success requires learning, strategy, and adaptation. Hard work opens the doors, but strategy decides which door you walk through. Hey guys, I want to say thank you for joining me on the Mindset Manual. It's been a pleasure to share my stories with you. I appreciate you for listening. If you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button. Would you please do so now? And if you know anybody that needs to hear this story, please share it with them. I love them to join the family and be a part of this community. Stay tuned. Next week, we're going to do episode 6. Part 6 is about your habits or writing your future. Thank you for tuning in. Stay blessed, stay balanced, and keep practicing that emotional intelligence.
The Mindset Manual. with Myron Williams.